pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. The first thing on our agenda today is the consent agenda. We needed to amend the June 9th minutes to include the comments made by Ryan Assell from MAPPA to, that was required by the state of Iowa for the CDBG grant. So,
I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Next up, we have Andy Brown, the sheriff. Discussion decision to approve and authorize the chair to sign the law enforcement services contracts between Potawatomi County and the cities of Carson, Crescent, Hancock, Macedonia, McClellan, Minden, Neola, Oakland, Trainer, Underwood, and Walnut. Mr. Brown, you're up.
So there's not much to discuss in those outside the fact of they're exactly the same as they were last year, minus one. Carson kind of called us on the current census and they were down on numbers, so I think their contract went down a little bit. And also you may notice that Avoca is not in there because we're in the talks with Avoca right now because their current police chief is retiring here in the next week or two. And they're just trying to get ideas on how they want to continue with policing in Avoca. So we're gonna give them some numbers on what it would cost them for us to cover it, or, you know, of course they have the numbers if they wanna hire another chief. So we should have that wrapped up here by the end of this week, so.
Do they still have an employee?
Yes, yeah, they have a police chief out there, and he will be done.
July 1st?
July 1st, yeah, so he'll be done here in the next couple of weeks.
Andy, a few years ago, we had an increase. We all met out at Oakland.
Yeah, that was, I think, 5 years ago, and it was decided on a 3-year contract that was 3% every year. So this year I delivered them personally and tried to meet every city, representative that I delivered them to let them know there's probably going to be a 3 to 5% increase on them, so be prepared to budget it. So it's just the decision on the board on what we wanna do. I mean, I think my personal opinion, we should just find a set number and do that just every year, so there's not any confusion, so they can budget it, you know, from here on out on it every year, so.
Do you like the idea of doing like a 3-year deal where we just still have the elevator, but then it gives you kind of a look-see every once in a while, you know?
Just depends on what you guys wanna do, because, I mean, we're at the 3-year mark and then nothing really got done. Now we're 2 years where they didn't go up, so personally, I just think it'd be better to set like a decent number. Of course, you guys don't wanna be running people out of these towns because we want the, you know, revenue coming in, but, I mean.
Well, we're never gonna offset it.
No, we'll never get to that point where it should be right, but again, we're trying to get people to come out into the community, and if they have lower town taxes, it would help, so.
Do we need to meet with the mayors and stuff of those towns to?
We
go
certainly
over this?
can, like I said, it shouldn't be a surprise to them. I think the only two that I missed were Carson and I think it's actually only Carson, the only one I didn't get a chance to talk to personally, let them know that there's probably going to be an increase, so.
Like, another question I have with, you know, kind of relates to this, the fact that there could be increases in the future, but do we have, I mean, you keep the data, obviously, of what kind of calls you get in these areas. I mean, have you seen any kind of changes to that at all, or has it been status quo? I mean, is it less?
I had to use the term status quo, but I don't think there's been a substantial increase
Yeah.
outside of course, our Shelby jurisdiction, but again, it's the truck stops and that's a whole different animal right there, so.
That's the one I wanna bring up.
But I mean, Avoca is probably our next biggest call volume because of the truck stops up there and of course, all the accidents that come off the interstate, so.
So Shelby's not a part of this list anyway, so.
Correct.
Okay.
But they should be, right?
That was discussed last time. I think Matt was gonna talk to the Shelby County attorney and potentially see what they wanna do about it, or the Shelby City attorney, because the fact of that it's technically the city of Shelby jurisdiction, which is covered by Shelby County Sheriff's Office, but yet we're the ones always taking the calls at the truck stop, so.
So what would happen,
Lid off, I'll get on it.
Corn crazy.
so what would happen if we quit taking
You
those
slept.
calls?
Quit taking the calls?
Yeah, but they're not our responsibility, right?
Well, then Shelby County would be responsible, but I'm not sure what kind of coverage they have to take calls like that.
No,
so.
we'd be responsible by the statute, because they reside in Pot County. So we would have to take the accident reports, whatever.
Isn't the city got local control anymore?
Well, the city has control, but has no law enforcement ability. So then it falls back on the sheriff.
I thought the mayor was the chief law enforcement in those cities. By law.
I'd have to go back and do the research. I don't think so, though. I think the statute says that upon absence of law enforcement, the sheriff has to respond.
Even though it's in a city, huh?
Yeah, but the city sits in Pot County, that part of the city sits in Pot County.
Right.
So, the other thing on these contracts, we have to make sure that every 10th year, we've got something going with the towns, because that's what we ran into with Carson, because the census changes populations and we base the contract on people.
Right.
We should at least on the 10s, review the contracts, because some will go up and some will go down depending on census of those cities. But yeah, I'll defer to Matt on the Shelby deal.
So what do you think our calls for service are out there?
I can pull them. I mean, we get them every month.
So, basically the Pot County taxpayers are paying for those. And the Shelby County people are getting them.
They pay a contract to Shelby County for the city proper.
Right.
But yeah, everything south of that new truck line there is in us, and we're making the calls.
North of the interstate.
I don't think it's that far.
Half mile.
Yeah, it's half mile, like it's
Yeah.
nothing where it's at, but yeah.
It's
Matt, is there a precedence
roughly L
anywhere?
34, where well, L 34 comes across, that's basically the county line.
Is there a precedence set by another county in this predicament?
I mean, there has to be other counties that are dealing with this issue. I mean, I can't imagine that we're the only, issue where there's cities are in two different, counties. I mean, isn't Tabor sort of in that situation?
Ames, although they wouldn't pay a contract probably, but.
Yeah, they have their own police force, but I
Yeah.
would guess like Tabor, just as an example, is gonna straddle Fremont and Mills.
When you were responding up there, that's one of the hottest spots in the county, is it not?
The truck stop is.
Yes.
There's probably more people in Pot County than in the city of Shelby.
I don't know in the city limits there would
You
be.
got Menards with, I don't know how many they employ there.
Yeah, it'd be all transitory on our
They may
side.
have more calls, but I mean, almost all of the residences in Shelby are north of the county
No,
line.
right, no, I understand. Did they,
You got an RV park, Menards, and
they haven't built a
truck
hotel
stop.
up there yet, have they?
No, I
No, I don't think there's a hotel up there at all.
don't even think the Dairy Queen's open or any of that stuff on the side.
Yeah.
I think Evoque would be the closest.
Well, I don't know,
Hotel.
it just seems like, we're getting kind of used a little bit there and we need to get our pay that everybody else is paying, but.
So you said that you did talk to him that the elevator will probably start taking place here this next year. So I mean, they're prepared, I guess, at
Yep.
least these communities. So. I
The
don't
board
know
will
either.
work with you, Andy, and set a date, either November or December, to meet with all those mayors and make sure that they're all on board with what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, when I was delivering them too, I mean, every city clerk asked like, oh, how much did it go up this year? I'm like, well, it's nothing this year, but I said expect a 3 to 5 next year. So I mean, I think they expected, they just wanna know how much they wanna budget, so, or how much they need to budget, so.
When you say that, I mean, are we talking hitting them on their fiscal year?
Well, if we meet with them in November or December and let them know that there will be an increase of whatever, 3 to 5%, they have the opportunity to budget for that then and
You're saying for the next.
for the next
Got
fiscal
it.
year. Yeah, well, we can't do anything about this.
I think we should do that with the mayors.
Nope.
I really do.
You need a motion to approve this?
I do.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, any other discussion for Andy, Jeff, Matt? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, next up, we have Andy Brown, Sheriff. Discussion decision on pay for work breaks for clerical employees at the sheriff's office and jail. I'll just make a couple of opening comments and then kind of turn it over to Matt for some explanation. I think what the board was alerted that there was an hour change in some clerical for some clerical people in the sheriff's department. And our county hours for all employees are 8 to 4:30, and was our understanding that the request was to change that from 8 to 4. Understanding that Sheriff Andy Brown is an elected official and gets to run his office the way he wants to, the board is responsible for compensation and benefits for all employees. So with that, I will ask Matt Wilbur to make a couple of comments, if you would.
Sure, Chairman Wickman, I mean, this has been a little bit of a dispute, obviously, between the board and the sheriff. Sheriff wants to be consistent, has over 200 employees, and I think 9 of them are in the front clerical office of the jail and the sheriff's office. So all 200 except for those 9, I think, works what we'd call straight 8 or straight 12-hour shifts. And so the sheriff wanted to bring, I think, for a couple of decades, I think it's the sheriff's office side, had been working basically 8 to 4, the same straight 8. And the 4 or 5 that are in the front office of the jail have been working basically pursuant to really all the other clerical employees of the county, 8 to 4:30. So the sheriff wanted to move his 4 or 5 jail employees into line with the other 200 employees of his office. This, of course, alerted the board that that had been going on in the sheriff's office for some period of time, and all other clerical employees in the county, whether it's my office, auditor, treasurer, everybody else, basically works, pursuant really to the terms of the employee handbook, which are, you say 8 to 4:30, that's fine, but I mean, I think that we get to set as elected officials the hours of work that our offices are open to the public. It's so long as they're, I guess, paying attention to what the time worked is. Board wanted to make sure that all clerical office employees of the county are being consistent and working the same. Puts me in a tough spot because I'm working for the sheriff, I'm also working for the board. I informed both of you that I really wasn't in a position to resolve the dispute. I reached out for some informal assistance from the Attorney General's office. I don't have a formal Attorney General opinion, they only issue a couple of those every year, but I did get an informal opinion from one of the Assistant Attorney Generals that I respect at the office. And said basically he directed me to a 1983 Attorney General opinion. And so it said issues like vacations, sick leave, timesheets, those issues are really within the jurisdiction of the board. Hours of work, discipline, work assignments, public hours of opening the office, those are for the independent elected officials to make those decisions. So that's sort of where we're at right now. So basically, I think that's the fight that we have. I'm not saying I have a formal opinion from the Attorney General's office, but it certainly appears, at least informally, like the issue of compensation is one that goes to the board. So I've talked to the sheriff, I forwarded that letter off to him, I forwarded the letter off to the board, and I think this is sort of an opportunity for each, I won't say side, but all the officials to sort of get together and figure out how do we deal with this issue going forward.
Well, I have a couple things I want to say. I mean, looking at the situation, it's incredibly difficult to be sitting here on the board and seeing this because on one hand, just coming from the private sector where I come, if you're an hourly employee, it's hours worked equals hours paid. And then on the other side of this, you're an elected official, and I look at you as a leader, your department, and it's its own entity, it's its own beast. And as a board member, I have zero interest in getting in your way of running your department. I also know what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish with your department as far as, we're in a tough time right now in the labor market in general. And, when people come to work, it's very difficult for them to put, the cost to put money in your gas tank isn't extremely depressing anymore. And I realize what you're trying to do with your department as far as overall morale and getting things in line and having them operate in your vision for your department, your office, I think is incredibly important. So I think sitting here, I'm incredibly torn on what to do because we're supposed to be stewards of taxpayers' money, and we look at it like, we want to be fair as best we possibly can. But then on the flip side of it, I look at a lot of these other clerical staff. They work for different department leaders. They work for different elected officials, and so I almost feel like each of those elected officials should have the opportunity to set how they want things to be done. And so, I'm really standing here as Sweden right now in the sign up. I don't really know what to do in this situation. It's very difficult. We're damned either way. And so I just hope that as we continue this conversation that we can find resolve that we all agree with and move forward.
Well, I'm gonna chime in just a little bit, as you say, you're sort of, Sweden in the middle. I mean, the struggle for the board is, I don't think you can avoid a fight of some sort. I don't even mean with the sheriff. I mean that there's other departments, we have, some of these employees are collectively bargained positions. The ones on the sheriff's office clerical side are. We've obviously got sort of clerical office employees in many of the other offices, including mine. And I mean, I think you are gonna get grieved no matter what decision is made. I mean, you're either going to have the union employees at the sheriff's office that have been working 8 to 4 that are gonna now be told that they have to work 8 to 4:30 to get the same pay, which is likely gonna lead to a grievance. Or you're going to say, we're going to just basically give special consideration to the sheriff's office, which is probably gonna lead to an AFSCME grievance, or roads department or whoever else, because I know that the board's had different departments reach out that are paying attention to this issue as well, and that's probably gonna lead to a grievance. So this may be that it's an issue that's not formally resolved until it goes to arbitration in some union or the other. That's sort of where we're at. I don't think you can probably avoid a grievance. You just have to do the best you can with what you have, and then I guess see where the chips fall.
Is there anything you'd like to say, Sheriff Brown?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that it's come to this point. I mean, like, anything I wanna do is best for my employees, and everything I did to these 4 employees that now are under scrutiny on these hours is nothing illegal. I was just following what they should have been doing in the past anyway. So I just was trying to make it right for 4 employees, and so we're in front of the board now, today, talking about this, because we had 4 employees that were working at 8 to 4:30. And now they're on a straight 8, so like everybody else is out of the 220. The reason I know it's not illegal is because 90% of the, law enforcement agencies across the country all work a continuous shift. So I know that's legally not an issue, because council does the same thing as we do. So like I said, I was just making it right for everybody that works in the office.
I think that when we take a look at the, and Matt, help me with this if I make a mistake. We pay for hours worked, and no one is gonna get paid to eat their lunch. So we were kind of stuck between, we have 2 choices, in my opinion, we have 2 choices for all of your clerical staff in the sheriff's office and the jail. They need to work 8 to 4:30 to get paid for 8 hours a day. If they wanna work 8 to 4, they get paid 37.5. I don't see any other way to do it. We have 450 employees, and if we treat the clerical staff at the jail and the sheriff different than we treat our road employees, who work their tails off out there just like everybody else, all our other employees in the county do, we're gonna have issues with 440 other employees. And it's unfortunate that we're in this position, as Supervisor Schultz said, but here's where we're at. And it was my understanding in conversation with our county attorney that if an employee is working 37.5 hours and claims 40, that can become a legal issue as well. Am I correct there, Matt?
Well, yeah, if we've got, you don't wanna have people altering timesheets. The issue of what you're paying for the hours worked, I say it's a tough situation to get around. I think you're gonna probably have my concern is you're gonna have an issue with the state auditor, more than, probably anything else. Andy's right, though, when he says he's not doing anything illegal. The question is, the board makes the decision about compensation. You can't say it's illegal to set up a situation. I think I'd only take issue with one thing you said, nobody's gonna get paid to eat their lunch. My understanding is our deputies, when they're on shift, they have paid
Jail,
lunch.
everybody in our place.
I don't wanna make that an issue.
Sure, I'm just saying that.
Talking about the clerical
Sure,
staff that
that's,
work 8
that's,
to 4:30.
yeah, the question is, when you're dealing with sort of non-sworn, I mean, I understand the corrections officers aren't sworn, the detention officers have a little different situation. But I think for your, that's, I don't wanna take issue with either side, because I understand what Andy wants to do, which is to treat all of his 200+ employees the same. And I understand what the board wants to do, which is treat all similarly situated county employees the same. The problem is the irresistible force has met the immovable object, and, you're gonna have to deal with it. We have union contracts, unfortunately, that, if you wanted to set up a different contract with folks that allowed, that put the situation into place, then, I think you could do that. But right now, we sort of have competing contracts with different, entities. You're gonna have to deal with it.
Well, you're looking at this another way too, is that you've got employees that have been doing this for better part of 20 years or so. I don't know how long they've been doing it.
Maybe
but,
40, yeah, from what we've been told.
Right, so we're competing against that as well. So what Andy was trying to do, correct me if I'm wrong, you were trying to create consistency across the board for all of your employees. You wanted to make sure that these 4 were not being treated differently than your other group that was already doing this. And so,
And not to interrupt you, Justin, but our clerks, I've said this before and I know you don't believe it, but our public safety is different. We're different than your clerks that work here at the treasurer's office, different than your recorders, different than your auditors. We're different. We have different hiring for them. They have to do a criminal background check. We have different certifications for them that other people aren't required to do. That's why they fall under the sheriff's office, I guess, hours of work and contract. So I don't think there should even been a discussion, but yet we're here and then you're trying to compare our clerks to the other clerks and it's different. So if it's something that the other department heads and electeds wanna do, then I guess it's their decision to do it. But I have 55 sworn deputies and all the other, 200+ employees I have are civilian. So it's not the fact of it's because it's certified over civilian, it's under the sheriff's contract and under the sheriff's umbrella, so that's why it shouldn't be an issue. Like I said, affecting 4 employees that should have been, under the same contract as they always have been.
If those, I understand what you're saying, Sheriff Brown. If those employees, you feel, have to go through a certain set of testing or requirements to take that position, security clearance, whatever, they should be compensated for that, not getting 2.5 hours of pay that quote, maybe they didn't earn. And the board wasn't aware, the county attorney, I don't know if anybody was aware that it was happening for the last 40 years. So if it's wrong, it needs to be fixed. If it isn't wrong, then, there could be an arbitration issue or something like that. But, we've done the math, and if we were to allow, your clerical staff to work 8 to 4, which is 37.5 hours a week, and we were grieved, and every other employee did that, it would cost the taxpayers $1.5 million a year. As I stated before, as much as I hate to, we have 2 choices. 8 to 4:30 or 37.5 hours a week. I don't know any other way around it. I don't know what else you want us to do. Scott, do you have any comments?
No, I just don't know what, morale's such a huge thing when it comes to, employees, and we're all on the same team, even though we all have separate missions. And just past practices doesn't mean it was correct, and I think if we gotta go to arbitration to get this thing figured out for the best of everybody, then I guess that's the road we go down. Ultimately, we're responsible to the people that pay the way, which is the Pot County taxpayers.
Yeah, but if you're concerned about taxpayer money, then we need to be more strict on, everybody else's lunches around here too, because I know there's a lot of employees in this courthouse that take more than an hour lunch, and you drive by a work site and see 3 secondary roads, guys standing next to a shovel while one guy's working. It's just the way it is. So if it's gonna be the fact of you're worried about our clerks not getting a paid lunch, when they come to work and they have their heads down working all day long, they get an hour lunch break, or well, actually a half-hour lunch break, subject to callback, and they come back and work. They don't get breaks like everybody else does. So it's just, when you're saying it's about a compensation, then we got a whole different, can of worms open on that one, so, and affecting taxpayer dollars.
The, you know, if I need a weapons permit, the most important person is the clerk in your office that does that. If I have a property split, the most important employee to me would be in the auditor's office. If I'm trying to get a building permit, the most important person to me would be the person in planning. So every county employee is very important. So there's, in my opinion, there's no employee is more special than anybody else. It's just a matter of what service you're gonna request from the county offices. So I don't wanna beat this up to death, and we need to move forward with something.
I got a
Well, I
question.
think before we move forward, again, it's like, just wanna say something that, like, I mean, if you change these hours, I mean, we're looking at arbitration and a lawsuit. I mean, do we wanna put that out there and like waste more taxpayer, you're worried about taxpayer money, but here we are wasting taxpayer money, talking about something that's not an issue.
40 years, Andy.
In every division, in every department, there's taxpayer money being wasted.
Okay.
I think we face that issue either way we go with this, unless we do nothing. So I have a question, and this is more administrative, so we're gonna remove all feelings for a minute. Do the job descriptions of these staff differ, other than saying that it works at the sheriff's office or something, than the ones? Because maybe that's something we need to look at too. Because maybe, I'm not gonna get into who's more special and who's doing what, but perhaps there are technical duties that the sheriff's group are doing that are different, that we need to be identified in their job descriptions, and if they're not, we need to probably go that route. Like I said, removing all emotions from this for a second. I'm curious if that's different.
They're not. So, for example, office clerk, it talks about answering the phone, greeting individuals, maintaining established file systems. And a lot of times when you compare jobs too, you take a look at what's the requirement for the job, like what Andy was talking about. Are there additional requirements that we need from whoever we're gonna hire because they're gonna be doing something different? The office clerk is a high school diploma or GED, driver's license, and clerical office experience. So as it's written today, it is very, very comparable to other administrative and clerical staff within the county.
My question didn't accomplish anything, I'm sorry. I'm just curious if
Did I answer your question though?
You did.
Okay.
I'm just,
Okay.
But Justin, that's not the reality of that job.
no, and I
The
get it.
reality of that job is criminal investigation,
Right.
annually pass NCIC and Iowa information systems courses, and they have jobs specifically to duties that if an emergency happens, I have to call them.
Right.
And say, you need to get back to the office right now, or come back from the break room right now, because Lynn County wants to know about the drunk driving on this record. Or last week, our visitation program went under. And the inmates are all starting to lose their minds because they can't get on the inmate system. There's one lady that does that. We had to call her back to do that. So I take great umbrage that they are working 37 and a half hours a week. Because we call them routinely off their lunch breaks, like we do the rest of the 200 employees out there.
I wonder if we should not change the job description.
We can sure take a look at that, on updating the job description, if it sounds like maybe the team is saying that maybe it doesn't accurately represent what they're doing. I don't know if some sort of time study would be helpful on how many times you do actually call them in.
I don't know, I guess where I was going with my line of questioning is that, are these indeed different? I don't like the word special. I like, and what Chief Deputy Toon just identified, it sounds like a lot of requirements that are much different than what our other employees have to do as far as, credentials anyway, as far as having to pass the background check. I don't know if they're different or not. I mean, that's a question I would have.
I mean, everyone has to pass a background check, but not the
Right, they can't work
NCIC.
there if they have some.
If
sort
they
of
have
legal
any
issue.
kind of misdemeanor or felony, even arrest, doesn't even have to be a conviction, they cannot qualify for our job. Last month, the FBI sat for 2 days in our office questioning all these ladies on information they had handed out. So they go through incredible audit screening that can be criminally sanctioned if they mess up. They can go to jail if they release the wrong information, things of that nature.
I mean, if I had to make the decision based solely on their job descriptions today, I'm saying we just need to move forward, making the switch to what we're discussing. But if these are indeed different, I think we need to make sure those are identified and then show that, so these job descriptions are different. But I mean, either way, this board has to make back when I was born, 1983, there's an attorney general that made some clarity to this, and so I just think that we need to get an answer. We either need to go down the path of, let's let this next guy make the decision for us through a grievance, either way, or we need to look at this job description thing and come back. So that'd be my 2 cents for what it's worth.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Well, there's gonna be a grievance for sure, because, I mean, the clerks out there fall under the sheriff's contract, and the contract says that they're on a continuous workday, so this shouldn't even gotten to this point, like I said before. I don't know who's driving the ship, but it's like, it will be a grievance, because the contract says that they are considered a straight shift.
The comment, who's driving the ship, what do you mean by that, Andy?
Well, who's making the big issue of this, I guess? Is it all 5 of you, or?
No, it was you that did. It came out in your newsletter that
You were changing the hours from 8 to 4 for people. And everybody in the county, all the employees saw that. They felt that if you could do it, they wanted to work 8 to 4 too. So it wasn't the board that brought this up. We knew nothing about it. It was the newsletter that the sheriff's department put out that had those hours in it.
Yeah, and these hours we've always worked essentially, and it was just being transparent with the county, so, I mean,
Yeah, but we come back to the issue of fairness and what's good for one group of employees versus another, and, I think the board needs to make a decision today, what path they're gonna take, and if a grievance happens, it happens, and there's nothing else we can do about it.
but is that fair to not to put any more sting onto what's going on here, but is it fair to the next board that's gonna be involved in a lawsuit that they adopt this? I mean, it's in our contract, Supervisor Wickman, Chairman Wickman, however you want me to address you, it's in our contract that they are on a continuous 8-hour shift. And they get paid a half-hour lunch, so you're violating the association contract who they are involved with.
It's my understanding that bargaining unit is for law enforcement, officials, so.
It's not,
Okay.
we have civil clerks that are involved in that contract that pay their dues. So you've gotten bad advice on that part, Tim, I'm telling you right now.
was the pleasure of the board.
All right, I'll step down from chair. Brian, you're the chair. I'll make a motion that effective July 1st, the sheriff's office employees and jail office employees are work 8 to 4:30.
But how can you do that with a contract that was just signed that takes effect July 1st and that are included in that contract?
Hang on. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
So I have a couple discussion points. I'm concerned about making this decision today. I think a decision absolutely needs to be made and needs to be made soon, but I do, this thought process, this line of thinking I had about this job description thing, I think we need to explore a little more before we make any call. And the end result might be exactly the same as what it may go down the path today, but I just feel like I think there's things missing from these folks' job description based on what you're telling me today. And I think we need to review that. And I do think we need to work with our HR department to get that sorted out for sure. And if it's not, then we need to come back and just vote this through, but.
Jan, Matt, can you guys review that for us?
Yeah, we can. I mean, I'm just gonna tell you, I understand what Chairman Wickman is wanting to get to. I'm not positive the way the motion was made, that you have the authority to make that. I'm just telling you the work hours, saying that the sheriff's office shall work 8 to 4:30. I think that the sheriff gets to decide the hours of work. I do think you can say you gotta work 40 hours, get paid 40 hours, you don't get paid the breaks. I mean, I'm just telling you technically, I feel like that motion has problems, as currently stated.
So if I rescind that motion, would you rescind your second? And then you want the motion to say that the sheriff's office and jail office employees work 40 hours a week?
I'm not saying I want
Well, I
to
mean-
say anything. I mean, I understand where, I'm saying, I mean, I think the question mark is, everybody in the county clerically wise right now basically gets a half hour, unpaid lunch, and they get 15-minute paid breaks. The dispute here has to do with an 8 to 4, situation and 15-minute paid breaks. It really has to do with whether the half hour lunch is paid or unpaid. I mean, I think that's the question mark. There. So, the motion would have to address whether or not the clerical staff at the sheriff's office and the jail get paid lunch or unpaid lunch. I think that's the issue.
So Matt, if they went to a half-hour lunch, could they still do the 8 to 4?
I don't think that, you're gonna have some employee.
The contract reads a half-hour lunch, paid lunch.
Well,
Okay.
and so when we review the job descriptions, I think it'd be good for us to sit down and talk about the union contracts too, because the Teamsters contract, when it talks about, you're talking about continuous shifts, the detention officers, 12-hour shifts, right? Included is detention officers. Excluded, detention manager, jail administrator, secretary. So the contract excludes that job title of secretary from the benefits of this contract. I know that historically, right, a lot of times what's in the contract, we allow it, you allow it for the other staff, but it clearly says excluded secretary. So that would be the administrative staff. The detention office, or the deputy one isn't quite as clear, because it says the normal work week for employees, other than employees working a continuous shift, shall consist of 40 hours. But what it doesn't define is who are other employees that work a continuous shift. It doesn't say sworn or uniformed officers. It doesn't have that distinction.
But page 7 says a day is defined as 8 hours of non-continuous shift employees.
Which is,
So
the
it does say
spirit of the
specifically.
contract, it's been our clerks. All our clerks fall under that because they are part of the association contract, not the Teamsters contract. Like I've been trying to say, it's the association contract, black and white right there, that
Well,
it
not
says
your
that
jail
they're
staff.
continuous.
Yeah,
Not your jail
They're
staff,
still
right?
clerical staff though, so they're considered like,
The
you know,
story,
our.
Andy, is we've got 3 categories. We've got union employees, sheriff's contract, we have union employees, AFSCME, or, other, union employees, and then we've got non-union employees. And so, that's what I said, unfortunately, there's just no way to get around the fight, because, I suppose you could say, well, your sheriff's office, contract, I don't think it's an unreasonable interpretation to say the sheriff's office, front office staff falls under the collective bargaining agreement, the sheriff's office, continuous 8, that's fine. It doesn't solve the problem with the jail employees, because they're not under any contract. And I don't think they want to, or I don't think the sheriff's association wants them to join that
No, that
contract.
changed in the last week. That's the practical of what's happened here.
Okay.
2 clerks in my front office on the sheriff's side that were never association employees joined the association. And 4 jail employees have now gone to the sheriff's deputies association and said, we want in. It doesn't liquefy their public safety problem. It would be a PERB question for that. So what we've done essentially is forced employees into associations that didn't want to be in associations.
And it's like traditionally has been, I mean, our civil clerks are part of the contract. They always have been. They are under the association contract and this will affect them. Also, the other office staff, including jail, have always gone with the spirit of the contract, including holiday, how they use sick time, funeral leave, compensation. If they get a 3% raise, they get a 3% raise along with them. So they've always had to adhere to the association contract.
And Matt, do you have to recuse yourself if this goes to arbitration?
I've already told both of you, I'm not, if it goes to arbitration, I'm not handling it.
So we're gonna pay a lot of money to lawyers.
I just have the whole part of, I don't know. I have to believe, as it's written, it's not different. I want to explore whether or not it is different. I think that would help me in my decision making anyway. That's just me personally. I think on the surface, it doesn't appear to be that way, but then when you brought up these things you just talked about with different qualifications, it seems different, so I want to explore that more before we make this call today.
So how do we explore that with
Well,
Matt?
we just have to wait on the vote, but I don't know that. I'm over here, you're over there, so I mean, it depends on what the board wants to do. Right now, we got a motion and a second on the floor, so.
Actually, you rescinded it, I don't think there is a motion.
And I want to back the sheriff.
I think we all, just in fairness, I think all of us want it back to sheriff. I really do believe that. I just think.
He's gotta run his department.
Yeah, but decision, I mean, here's the thing with your opinion or not, though, it's under association contract. I mean, you guys normally go outside of a contract that's already written, especially the existing one we're in now and the one for 22-23, it's already done.
I don't know that, I'm not arguing, but I don't think that anyone is saying they want to do anything against the contract, but the contract does say 40 hours. The question is not what hours you want your staff to work, because you might have to have them come in early someday, leave late. You have to make sure the work gets done. That's your job. None of us have done those jobs. We don't know what they require, but it's just how you get paid for the hours that you work. Are you getting paid for hours that you don't work? To me, that's the question.
But our contract says you get paid for a half-hour lunch.
The hard part is we walk out of this room, we go downstairs, we walk past Lee's office and we do something that's different. You know, from the board's perspective, it's gonna make it look very, very difficult. You know, we have to say, well, you guys are different than the sheriff. And I'm asking for us to prove that. That's all I'm saying before we make this call. Because right now, I don't know that the other elected heads would agree. So I wanna make sure that we are able to just indeed prove that and say, look, here's what's different, here's why, and then we can go down that path, but.
Well, my gremlins are messing with my contract right now, but I know on page 7, it states the continuous work schedule, and also Article 8 on page 12 says hours of work per the contract. So there's 2 sections in the contract that they pay their dues for that say that they work a 8-hour day with a half-hour paid lunch. And I can't get it to open up. Do you have your contract up, Jana? So look at page 7.
That's what I got right there.
Do you have page?
Which contract are you
I don't have the
looking
other
at?
page.
The association contract.
Page 7.
Page 7, yep. Says a day is defined by 8 hours of non-continuous shift employee and 12 hours of continuous shift employees. And then page 12, Article 8 also says that it is a continuous 8-hour shift with a half-hour paid lunch.
And there's a remedy to this. If you guys don't like that, we negotiate next winter. And you try to pull it out of the contract.
Clerical office staff in the sheriff's department?
I don't think that's very clear, to be honest with you.
Well, I think it's very clear. They're the only 8-hour shift employees we have.
Well, do you have some investigators that work 8 hours?
They work 10s.
There were 10s? You can say it's clear. To me, it's not clear. It doesn't, when you look at job titles, I don't feel that it's clear. And I agree. I think that's something, a great conversation for me to have with the deputies this winter when we start negotiating to talk about that and to define it. So then there are no questions. But I don't think it's 100% clear.
So the contract, what do you call it? The one that you're,
Is it the association?
The association.
Deputies
Yeah, it's Deputy
Association.
Association, they have civilian staff in their union as well,
is
so.
that the statewide association then?
No,
No.
It's a separate contract?
it's the local bargaining unit.
And who represents them?
They represent themselves.
They're not affiliated with a FOP, AFSCME, whoever.
So do they have a legal representation or not?
They have an attorney that they work with, yes.
Like I said, it's been the spirit of the contract since day one that they've had this thing, that the office clerks follow the same thing they do, so. So like I said, they get the same raises as they would under their contract. They bargain for their wages, they bargain for their vacation, they bargain for every benefit of the contract, so.
Yeah, your office clerk, their title on the sheriff's side are in this contract. The jail side are not. It specifically says excluded in the Teamsters contract. Included in the association contract is office clerk, civil clerk. So their titles are listed in the contract.
But the jail, I could argue that still is our office clerk though, so.
Well, the problem is on the jail side, past practice has been to give them the Teamsters benefits. And I've done enough labor law.
That's not true, because the jail clerks have gotten the same benefits as our civil clerks.
No, that's what I'm saying.
And-
Yeah, no, we're saying the
City
same thing. Yeah.
Association. I can't get this to work, so.
Well,
As far as the, Jenna, if I'm understanding you correctly, that whether we like it or you don't like it, the sheriff's clerks are in the contract,
The sheriff's clerk's titles are included in the contract, yes.
so we need to negotiate that either in or out.
Well, I don't think we'll negotiate their titles out. I think what we would be talking about during negotiation is defining things more and who gets which benefit in here. Because there are benefits in the association contract that uniformed officers get, such as death benefits, that clerks don't get. And so the contract, we do need to go through it and define that more. Are there other things in the contract that uniformed officers get that the clerks don't get?
on the jail side, they are not included.
It says excluded, correct?
No, the Teamsters jail union says they're excluded. It does not say they're excluded from the association's contract. So let's not get that confused.
So then I think that needs clarification too, when we say, because on the jail side, their title is jail secretary, not office clerk. So if we're saying that, are they included in one contract or the other, maybe that needs to be clarified too, because the Teamsters contract says excluded secretary. That is their title. Detention officer, association contract says included office clerk. So, Tyler, their job description, say secretary. So if we want them to be someplace different, we need to work through that. But that's why I'm saying how it is today isn't crystal clear.
Yeah, but it's been past practice, so it's obviously, all the verbiage that we've got through everything is muddy, but it's just the fact if it's been past practice, it's been the spirit of the contract. So that's why this wasn't supposed to be an issue.
It does simplify things if the jail clerical staff goes under the deputy's contract. I mean, at least
It
then,
doesn't say in the contract, but they've always gotten the same raises as the other clerks got. They get the same benefits, the same vacation.
Well, I mean, they had
and so
formal
on.
conversations last week, so I think they're gonna try to join. It'll be up to the PERB to allow them in and push them. But it's only 4 people, so it's not gonna liquidate their numbers. I think they'll accept them.
because I know that there's obviously differences with the deputy's contract because of chapter 20,
Right.
the public safety contract.
That's the
versus-
amazing part of these clerks is they get the benefit of public safety employees by being in their association. I'll go back to what Matt said a year ago. We're different. We're different. The state treats us different. The retirement systems treat us different because we are a 24/7 911 operation. We have requirements that nobody else has. John has to get those trucks out there when it snows. But if they get there 20 minutes late, they still get scooped. That's not our business. Our business is jail system goes down, inmates are at risk of walking out of the place. And it's a clerk that does that computer system. So we are extremely different employees than the rest of the county. And folks, I've worked for him, I've worked downstairs as an emergency manager. We were different kinds of employees than these guys are. So that's, I guess that's my closing argument, if it will.
And my closing argument would be that if those people are that different, then they need to be compensated. They still need to work 40 hours a week.
So then, are the deputies gonna work?
I'm talking about the jail secretaries. It's my understanding from what Jenna said, that if the clerks are under the sheriff's contract or the deputy's contract, that's something that's gonna have to be either left alone, worked on, changed, or something in the
Completely
next
agree,
negotiation.
absolutely.
How long does it take to get a PERB determination on those positions? I'm just trying to, my
I have, since chapter 20 changed, I've had no, I mean, in private practice, I did some work with PERB, but I don't know what they're like now after.
any idea?
I don't, and my contact at PERB, she retired, so there's someone new.
My sense of the law is they will probably accept them just because we're talking about 4 people.
And since their contract is up for renewal this year, I would think that they would hurry that along to make that decision in preparation for negotiation, so that we know which titles we're talking about. But since they represent themselves, Jeff, does that change anything with PERB?
They represent the,
The deputy association?
no,
Okay.
no, they're recognized as a standalone association.
It's just-
Yeah.
I'm just trying to find a way to avoid a grievance of either side,
that's
so.
always gonna happen.
If
no
they
matter what.
were, well, if they're
Well,
added into a
doesn't-
if they become part of the deputies' association contract, then it's different. Then if it's contractually dealt with, I think we avoid the grievance.
Yeah, I don't know what the cause of action for an outside clerk would be. What's their cause of action? They're under a contract. They're gonna say, oh, we didn't like the contract we signed and now we're gonna grieve? I don't think there's a grievance. Now, if you do this to these girls, it's definitely a grievance because the language is clear.
Jeff, do you mean like from,
Secondary roads, if secondary roads clerical person says, I don't like this, the sheriff gets to be special, I'm gonna file a grievance. What's the cause of action of the grievance? They have no cause of action. They're under a contract.
Well, I think that's absolutely true if it's dealing with the sheriffs, with the association contract. The question mark becomes, how we're dealing with the jail employees that are currently
No, I
under
get
no
that.
contract. I'm just saying, that's
Right.
the wrinkle in the ointment.
But I get the
If everybody's
feeling-
under the association contract, I think I agree with you.
I get the feeling they're gonna be in the association contract fairly rapidly.
That was my question.
But they've got away with it for 40 years, that they get the same benefit as the
Yeah, but I mean,
civil clerks do.
I know, but the
now
board
they're-
does the same thing. They give the non-union employees the same raises that they give union employees. I mean, we've had sort of those past practices for a lot of years. So I don't know, I'm just talking on the legal side, I mean, I think that probably can cut both ways. But if the jail clerks, secretaries, whatever, if they go underneath the association contract, I mean, I do think that may, I'm not saying it resolves the issue because we still have to deal with it through negotiations, but it may offload the problem, from both unions. I don't know how the solution is for the board. I don't know if you just ignore the problem for 6 months while we try to get through negotiations and PERB. I don't know. I mean, those are,
No, I mean, our bosses, the taxpayers, may not agree with that, so I don't necessarily think that we need to not make a decision. I just don't know that I'm comfortable today making it on the surface. And I said this right at the very beginning, I am very much at the foundational building blocks here saying that hours work equals hours paid. Unless you're an exempt employee, that you're paid to do a particular function, and I think that's a big difference when we're talking hourly versus salary here. So that part I'm really struggling with. The other part of this I'm struggling with is the fact that I know what you're trying to accomplish in the sheriff's office and I agree with what you're trying to do. So I don't really know where that line intersects to make it right. So I'm not comfortable voting today unless we can indeed prove on paper why these employees are different than the other groups. Short of the contract thing. I mean, folks out there are not gonna care what your contract necessarily says. They wanna make sure that these job descriptions are indeed different. And right now, what you told me that they are. So I want that to get proven first. And then it's gonna be a lot easier decision for me. That's me. I'm just talking out loud, so.
Well, don't quote me on this though, but doesn't our clerks get paid different than our clerks over here anyway? It's a different pay scale, so.
I'm not smart enough to talk to that. I assume they get paid well,
I think they do.
I assume, but,
No, their
I
pay,
don't know that
their
for
pay,
sure.
I'm pretty sure is different than what it is over here anyway, so.
but I also would offer up that there's somebody else that's gotta answer the taxpayers here,
You're right.
constitutionally elected. So if they don't like what he's doing,
Well, and I don't want to,
But the sheriff's not responsible for their compensation, Jeff.
I agree. That's clear in the McMurray decision, that's clear in the AGs, that you guys are the fiscal agent for the county.
So I think we're at a 50-50 here that, no, I'm serious, I'm not making light of the situation, it's very important, and I don't even want to be in it, but we are. It sounds as though that the clerical staff in the sheriff's office may be under the contract with the rest of the sworn officers, is that correct?
They are in that contract, yes.
So that is something that needs to be negotiated. The jail staff is not, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so the jail staff need to work 40 hours a week to get paid for 40. Is that where we're at?
That's where it gets muddy, Tim, because they have gotten the same benefit of this contract since the contract existed, so they may not be members, but.
You can't do it two ways, Andy. You can't say, it's in this contract, it's not in this one, but by golly, they've been doing it that way for 40 years. That doesn't make it right.
Our sworn deputies have to. We have deputies that are not in the contract, get the same benefit. We have sergeants, lieutenants, and captains that are exempt from the contract, but we still have to adhere toward it for, again, pay, sick time, vacation accrual, retirement, everything's the same. There's exceptions to the rule.
Okay. I'll make a
Do
motion
we,
that the jail staff work 40 hours a week to get paid for 40 hours a week.
and leave the clerical be?
Yeah, that's something that's gonna have to be handled through negotiation. I don't know either way, we're on that one.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion and a second. Any more discussion?
I'll ask for a roll call.
Chairman Pro Tem is going to be Shay.
Yep.
Supervisors Belt,
Aye.
Glickman,
Aye.
Groby,
Aye.
Schultz.
Nay.
That's for the jail.
Okay,
Moving
on. Next up,
So
we have
that will not,
effective July, I'm sorry, I should have made that effective July 1st. Can
you want that,
yeah.
redo the vote?
I think we need to pick another one. I don't know if I can amend that motion.
It's already passed, I mean, if you just need to make a motion for the effective date, I guess.
Effective date, July 1st.
Yes.
Second?
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same.
Nay. Well, okay, you said same. I'm opposed.
Motion passed.
I just want to make it clear is before you walk out of this room that, I think that this issue needs further clarification. I think it boils down to these job descriptions, and I think we need to figure that out. I am very much in agreement, hours worked equals hours paid, but I also think we need to sort that piece out. And I also want to say right now, and I'm gonna say this on behalf of the board, if you disagree, then disagree publicly, but I think, not a single one of us doesn't support what you're doing. I think what you're trying to accomplish in the sheriff's office is great. I think things are going in the right direction over there, so. I think we just need to get some of these things sorted out, so we're not back here doing this again.
So you two are gonna work on the job description?
Well, we'll work in conjunction with them
That'd be great.
to update those job descriptions, yes.
yeah, you got, you're like, an island out there, but we're still part of a bigger team. And, morale's important there as it is here in the courthouse and down at 911 and the rest of the team, so, I hope we can, and I agree, you guys are doing a great job out there. I just hopefully we can get this paperwork, cleaned up and this settled without going to, some large legal, arbitration or something, so.
Mr. Chairman, can we take a 5-minute recess?
Yes, we could.
I've got,
Okay.
I haven't resigned yet.
I took back over.
That was tough.
I didn't realize they had, 3 of those.
Hey, Matt. Would you do me a favor? Are we still on? Yeah, you're just 12. Come here a second.
Is this our new employee?
Yes.
Hi, I'm
Yes.
Becky Lanahan.
Craig Carlson, nice to meet you.
Tax officer.
Very nice to meet you.
Just right over catty corner in the auditor's office.
Oh, okay, right over here?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And so she'll fill in, Melvin is the elected auditor, but he's out today, and so Becky will.
Okay.
And I think Linda's coming in.
Well, lucky you today.
I can always take over if needed to be the secretary.
Well, I argued the fact that it needs to be an auditor or an auditor's deputy
Oh.
to tend to the board with Melvin.
Okay,
We already had the argument this morning.
okay. Well, you keep, I will be last resort, how about that? Okay.
Or even Mitch was offered up too.
Becky is very instrumental when it comes to budget time. She pulls all the numbers together for us.
That's told me
Okay.
that the auditor's
I'll tell
office is really
I
a
paused
potential
that.
a lot of different
It
things
says
here,
it's
which
paused,
is surprising. To
so.
And when you look, yeah, and I think I will
Drug
have
coverage.
directed a lot of that.
Thank you. And I got this thing I'm gonna look at while I'm out of town.
Updated, but
You
I
can
think
answer
a
those
lot.
other two, I think they're unchanged.
Sure,
Charlotte?
It's
Oh,
like,
sure.
they, like.
The other
Oh,
two
yeah,
things,
yeah.
well,
Yeah, right, yeah.
Jenna does have,
Yeah.
so it does make
Yeah.
sense. But it's like, well, someone has to do it, so we'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Other duties as assigned from forever ago, huh?
Yes, and when you look at the makeup of their office, I'm sure Heather told you this too, you've got finance, and then elections, and then payroll, and then accounts payable, so you have many departments all within one department.
Yeah, that was, surprising.
It was, and then we had
Two people in HR. I mean, that's crazy. Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
I mean,
article.
everywhere that I've, yeah,
I know,
I know this is different, I guess, county
Right.
government. County government.
yes, that's exactly, that's how it goes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
When I told people it was 3 months, you know, they're like, yeah, that's good.
But
County.
they have enough
Yeah.
and so it's not like they're just, I don't know.
Yeah.
Hi there.
Remember that show?
I don't wanna rust gas, just so
I'm gonna keep on.
compaction station land
Do we don't vote on
is
that.
just loaded with mustissels.
I can step down as chairman.
Now, if we're gonna enforce the law.
Yeah, like
Clarify
we
like the timing on it.
let
We
them
got
in,
city
Right.
so to speak.
Wilbur
And for
come
them,
in.
they
Yeah, he's on the
members
site.
come in and complain
Where
about
are we at?
30%.
put that on pause.
Yeah, I'll.
Otherwise they.
It is, hey, Justin, is it on pause?
Yeah, she's positive.
No, we give it back to the city.
Already?
Already? You've got it done?
As they should.
Yeah, you guys made the motion, remember Vince was here, Vince Garrett came in, and you guys made the motion and everything, and that was just drawing up paperwork.
Yeah,
But
so
it's-
they.
Congratulations.
It
just loaded with mustissels.
Yeah, and I mean.
Yeah, those guys,
It
Vince
was
said
nice
that
to
they
get,
was
we
like
got it,
worried
but it was
about
already
it.
out.
We got mowing and all that, so I can talk to Vince.
Okay, we were.
Okay. I don't wanna make a big issue out
I
of
want a
it.
clarification. You relinquished your chairmanship.
Good what? I try to stay on Vince's good side.
I know.
All right.
They specified time,
So-
so
What?
you didn't technically specify
so
time
it's-
period that you're stepping down as chair,
Yes,
so I don't know how that works. So in theory,
yes, and the contract is closed right now.
And the
you
contract
and Brian arm
can't be
wrestle
changed, then it's up for negotiation.
Yeah, I sit down. and
This
make
fall,
motions.
this winter, with the July one effective date.
Then I would have to step down.
Okay, I'm gonna need some items.
So basically the,
so we are on item.
You make the call.
Charlotte C.
Okay, that's
We're
the
starting
second.
right here.
Okay.
Are we ready to go? I'm not sure who the chairman is right now. but
I am.
I'm gonna,
Oh,
the benefit.
are we ready to go back live?
I haven't resigned.
So we ready?
We just.
Make sure we still on.
Yeah.
I mean, includes as excluded, and the union contracts are what's.
Yeah, I got, no, I
You're
got,
recording.
But.
I'll make a motion to resign as pro tem chair.
I'll second me. Next up, we have.
Hold it.
There is no vote.
You can just.
You sure?
Yeah, you just have to say I'm ready.
Okay.
Next up, we have Matt Wine, Planning and Development, Pam Callstrip, discussion decision to approve the final plats of Schmitz Creek, Phase 1 and 2. And Hazeldale Township and sign planning resolution 22-08. Pam, do you have any comments you want to make on this?
This is the final plat, phase 1 and phase 2 of preliminary plats that you, as the board, approved back in, I think it was February. So they're just ready for their final plat. Get that recorded and then they can market them.
These are lots that fall along Badger Avenue. I think there's 5 lots that are gonna be in there. So hopefully we'll be able to see some new homes popping up soon on those. It's a nice place to build some houses. Again, this falls in line with those changes that the Board of Supervisors made back in 2016 to allow for some more of these to happen along seal-coated roads in Potawatomi County.
The names have been pretty interesting that we've been getting lately, so.
What,
That ain't Schmitz Creek there, is it? I didn't think it was.
They did do a lot of dirt work down in there to restore that waterway that ran through there, so they do have a nice little pond, and I mean, it's really pretty in and up quite a bit.
is this the one that has a bunch of the covenants on it?
They do have covenants, but
Is that, or was that on a different?
most of all of these minor subs that have come before you do have some form of covenants, so
The board doesn't set covenants.
no.
No, I know.
What's the pleasure of the board?
I'll approve.
Second.
Second.
Go ahead.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on resolution 8 of 2022-8. You call the roll, please.
Pardon?
So when we do roll call, you just list us off individually. They'll tell you on vote. So just say our name out loud and then they'll tell you what.
Okay. Brian?
Yes.
Scott?
Aye.
Aye.
Tim? Lynn?
Aye.
Justin?
Okay, Mark Shoemaker is out of town, as you guys were aware. Do you
Yeah.
want him to call in on that? Do you want me to call him on this phone?
Doesn't necessarily matter for recording purposes, it's better on the phone, but like the overhead one, so we can call. He'd have to call a conference number.
I can do whatever you want.
Is that conference number that 5848 number?
Yes, 328-5848.
Yeah, so are you texting him? So 712.
Wait a second.
328-5848.
328-5848.
712.
328-5848. We're dialed in too, right?
Pardon?
Aren't we dialed in? Is it? I
Not
don't
even
know.
on.
I don't know. I don't know if Becky, you can
Will
get
it
it.
flash?
I think I heard it on the, when we first started.
Okay, that's all I never, something that just happens that you never realize is happening.
I think when the light's green, it's on, right?
That,
texted him, I know there was a death in the family, and he's closing up some ends on that, so I texted Mark, so when he calls, we'll take it. Let's move forward on the federal rate change for the mileage rate for the remainder of 2022. Some of you probably saw that come through, that the Fed changed the reimbursable rate from 58.5, I believe, to 62.5. And if this board is going to move forward with that change, we need a resolution.
Hey, I'm on now.
Hey, hold on one second, Mark.
So I'll make the
Okay.
motion to approve the rate change, federal standard mileage rate for the remainder of 2022.
Is that for July 1, isn't it?
Yeah, it starts July 1.
Okay. Second.
Any motion and second, any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, Mark, you are up. Discussion.
Yeah.
A discussion decision to approve and authorize the chair to sign certificate of completion to certify completion on the trail projects in the segments from L34 to Weston, including 2 bridge crossings over Mosquito Creek and Railroad Highway. Want to make a couple?
Yeah, what's that?
Make a couple comments on that for me, please.
Yeah, it was a grant to the DOT State Rec Trail Fund that I did about 5 years ago. It was $700,000 grant. We completed that portion of the grant and that project that funded. They hold back 5%, and they just need some forms completed and me to do the final reimbursement to get that $35,000 back from them once the project's complete. And this is one of the forms we need to do.
Okay.
I'll make a motion, we approve it.
Second.
Is there any other discussion for Mark on this? We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Mark, is there anything else we need you for today?
Nope, that was it.
You're awesome, Mark. Have a great day.
All right, thank you, bye.
Bye.
Okay, next up, we have discussion decision to approve the application for a fireworks permit filed by Robert Caputo. Fireworks on July 4th, and if it rains, it'll be rescheduled the following weekend.
Make motion to approve.
I'll second. Mark, Matt, do we have insurance on that? Do they have insurance on that, or what do they do?
Yeah,
It's part of their application.
It's part of the application.
Yeah.
You know, I guess one thing for just discussion, I mean, we've only had 2 of these so far, and I think it's important that we make it known that this exists, because otherwise people are just gonna do it anyway. And I think it's helpful to, I think it's nice to have a formal process in place to make sure that we're keeping track of this stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
I just think it's important to have the insurance.
We've got 2, and I can tell you right now, when you drive across this county on the 4th of July, you're gonna see more than 2 fireworks displays going on, so.
What's the threshold if you're just?
So Pam and I actually had some discussion about this process, starting, when the first ones came around, because Potawatomi County does require a special events permitting if you're going to have a certain number of people out at your property, over 300 people.
What was the number?
300. And so we do need to consider, if they're gonna pull a permit of this size, do they need to let us know how many people are gonna be out there for the event? That trips off a couple of different things for us. Do they need to supply porta potties on site? And it does help for the law enforcement community to know, was there potential for traffic issues? Are we doing these kind of things on gravel roads? A couple of different considerations that we're going to.
Fire for sure.
Yeah, we're gonna look into moving forward.
Should the number be a little lower, do you think? Just, and maybe it doesn't, well, it would require you guys to do a little work, but what do you charge for one of these?
I couldn't tell you what the fee is.
Okay.
They used to come around because it was so they could go buy the professional grade, they were having somebody out there to do the professional grade fireworks. Since the law has changed in Iowa and now fireworks are legal, this process has somewhat continued on. You are seeing it taper off. And so I think it is probably falling more in line with, are we gonna switch this to more of a special events permitting versus still trying to permit for fireworks when the fireworks are now legal in the state?
Well, maybe we just need to relook whether or not we even have this then.
Okay, on this particular
Well,
fireworks permit,
I'd go ahead and, I think we already approved it, didn't we?
No, we
we
said,
didn't take the vote.
Oh, okay. We probably better look and see what's going on, because I don't know if they drag us into it, because we didn't permit it, or, we get a permit that protects us and gives us some, insulation. I mean, I don't know how, like you said, the laws change. If there's gonna be a bunch of these pop up, and you might be right, Justin, I don't know. But the way you see things burning around the country, we don't need to see a bunch of
Country's on fire.
stuff in
Okay,
fire.
we have a motion and a second on the fireworks permit for Robert Caputo. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Next up, Jana Lemrick, Human Resources, discussion decision on department head contracts. Jana, you are up.
So we'd like to bring the individual department head contracts to the board next week in anticipation of a July 1st start date. But the department heads did meet and had some recommended changes, so I wanted to provide that template to you today before I bring each individual contract to you next week. So to start off, you do have a legislative copy, so you can see the changes that the board or that the department heads are recommending. The first one is number 3 under vacation. We're asking for any unused personal leave may be cashed out at the end of each fiscal year. Those are those 5 personal days that department heads receive. Department heads who have been here longer than someone like myself don't ever get a chance to use them because they're working so much and don't get time to take time off and already have their vacation balances maxed out. So either way, they're all maxed out but don't have time to use it. So we're asking if that is a benefit to them, then can we just cash it out if it doesn't get used?
so, hold on, do they bank those?
They do not roll over.
So you use lose.
That's how it's written today, correct?
Personal days.
5 personal days,
We
correct.
changed that before Matt got on, I'm pretty sure.
What was it before?
Well, because remember Kay Mocha, she was able to take advantage of using that for like several months, because she had, 30 years worth of stuff built up.
Oh, for what you did for Kay after the 2000,
Flood.
once you wrapped up the 2011 flood, she came in and asked if she could take a longer vacation time in the winter. And so she, I believe she took 2 months of vacation and spent time at at their vacation home that they had assigned all the duties over to us as staff.
Can we discuss these individually, or do you want to give us the whole list first?
No, we can discuss them individually, sure.
So here's my thought process and belief on this. I think the employees and department heads need to use this leave. I mean, it shouldn't get in a situation where you have to cash them out now. We just had COVID, and I'll look at Matt's sitting here, he legitimately really couldn't take time off during that situation, so he got to a point where you're banking that time and it's use lose. And I mean, I'm in full agreement with that, but my preference is that you take the leave,
It is important for everyone's mental health to take time off. And we did discuss that as a group, but again, it was brought up, well, yeah, I'm scheduled for a week off and I'm in the Black Hills or something, but I'm receiving phone calls. So I'm not really getting full break away.
Well, they shouldn't be taking phone calls.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think our department heads are very ethical workers that want to make sure that the work is getting done, and it's very hard to turn that off.
I think like literally any manager is guilty of this,
Agreed, yeah. Yeah.
civilian, whatever, I mean, I think the problem though is that I think somehow we need to get it in the writing that it's preferred that they take this leave, that this isn't a bonus at the end of the year if you're not using it. I mean, that's what I don't want to have happen. I don't want you to get to a thing where it's like, oh, well, I didn't take my leave, give me that $1,000 you owe me or whatever. I don't want that to happen. Now, if there's a reason they're not taking that leave, that's a different story, but there needs to be a reason, and I don't know how we clarify that.
Well, when we talked about it and then we had everybody together, so like, I can, I've been here for 15 years with the county, so I get a large amount of vacation, and the other employees probably hate me for saying this, but, we get a lot of time off for vacation wise, so it's either you're gonna lose your vacation time or you're gonna lose, and then on top of it, as department heads, then we get this 40 hours of personal time, and so you're kind of losing one or the other, because it's, because it'd be like 4 weeks
To
to a
your
certain
max.
amount.
Yeah, a certain amount.
So I'm at the max of vacation, and so the vacation, and I'm at the max of sick time. In 7 years, you can be potentially at the max of sick time in the county, so then you have your sick time that rolls over to vacation as well. That ups the amount of vacation that you're already earning, and so then you start to lose time, and you're either gonna lose it from one or the other, because then once I made it to department head, then you get 5 more days of time off. And then you have your floating holiday, and I mean, I think I've probably said it to you guys, to each of you individually before. I mean, it's just it's a lot of time off, and.
Well, yeah, and then I don't want to get to the other situation where it's the end of your time, you're gonna, it's your retirement or whatever, and then you're not here for 6 months because you banked up all that time. So I don't know. I think it's very important people take time off. I think we need to be careful, setting this precedent going forward, if we do agree to doing this, that you put a cap on it. So if they're doing this every year for 5 years straight, you just paid 25 days of vacation, or you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
I think there needs to be a cap on it over a period of time, but I don't know how you do that. I don't disagree with it,
We kind of felt it maybe fell in line with one of the union contracts, that they're able to cash out however much comp time or something, so, but.
Okay, let's start, because you're a department.
There's organizations in the private sector, mostly in the financial world, that no matter who you are and where you're at, you're mandatory to take 5 days away. Just to make sure there's nothing going on with the operation.
I just don't want them to lose this time at all, whether it's you lose your actual day that you're physically not here, not working, or whether if you can't do it, then you don't lose it, I don't feel like that's fair either. I just don't know,
I was thinking about putting some wording in there that it could be reviewed every other year, because review after 1 year is not gonna tell us anything, right? But these contracts are once a year, so I'm putting in a 1-year contract that we're gonna review it in multiple years, I don't think that's quite right. Or we could put a
do we know what
statement.
the dollar amount would be? Have we calculated that by chance?
If every department had, no, I didn't, I can.
Like I said, I don't want this to become the bonus program. That's the only thing we're paying you with taxpayer money.
What was the reasoning to put it in there? That's what I'd like to know.
Because you have quite a few department heads that aren't able to use that time. And so if it was important enough to put it in the contract in the first place, years ago, whenever, then we do want them to take it, but if they're not able to take it because the workload doesn't permit them to take time off, then still give them that benefit, but it's by paying it out. And similarly, we do have a MOU with one of the groups that they can cash out a portion of their comp time every year. Similar situation.
Right. I guess I want to make sure that as we're budgeting that number into it too. I don't know if we are we? Do we know?
Or is
that all relative?
Each one will be their own department, so if you figure out if you're not fully staffed for, 2 weeks, that pretty much makes up for what that payout would be,
Well, like when you calculate your salary, so if you get paid, X dollars, that includes that time off. but if you don't use that time off, then that would be in addition to.
Right, yeah, because if you take a week off,
So I'm just
you're
saying,
still paying for that, whether you, yeah.
I don't mind this either way, I just wanna make sure that we are budgeting for that, so if all the departments came to us at the end of the year and said, well, I didn't use all 5 of my days, I used 2, and I've got 3 left. Now all of a sudden, we've got however many departments saying that they want their money, and every $50-some thousand is a penny on the levy, so we gotta be careful.
That's a good point. Well,
Next item, sorry.
that's okay, no, good topics. Do you want to move to the next one?
Yes.
Okay. 6, then we added the employee may renew existing contracts or commitments as part of the regular course of business, provided that funding was approved in annual budget. So 6 was indicating that department heads could not sign contracts at all, period. I might sign a contract with NeoGov, right? NeoGov is the software that HR uses. Oftentimes I do bring that to the board for a board member to sign it. And 6 was almost indicating the department heads could not sign contracts at all. So for someone that has larger budgets and more contracts other than just HR, like John or Matt, felt that this was really tying hands. And so what we were saying is that, right, that's the one that we're talking about, John? Do you want to talk to that at all?
My contract's slightly different than this one, I guess, on that, because I have a code provision put in there. Part of it is, if you think about contracts, ordering pencils might be a contract in some people's view. There needs to be something for purchase orders and your regularly occurring work. I don't know that any department head should incur debt or interest-bearing contracts or that sort of thing, but just some definition there, I guess, to say what that limitation of authority is.
So, let me understand this. So you're saying no more signing of contracts?
No, we're saying that's what it was indicating before. And now we're saying as long as it's part of your regular course of business, so if someone needs supplies and it's in your budget, go for it.
So that'll be the 3rd time since I've been on board that we flip-flopped. So I'm just
Yeah.
want to make sure that we're doing this the right way. On one hand, if you have a contract and you do sign it, it makes it really easy to not re-sign it if we need to offload that employee if it's not, from our perspective. If you don't have a contract, that makes it a little bit different. Now, I know we're an at-will, or, whatever you call that.
This isn't for this contract, this is like IT renewing a subscription.
Got it, okay, so you're
So
not
it's not
having
with our employment
contract.
contract.
Okay.
This is just like, David might have 15 of them a month.
So
he's
you're
renewing.
talking, you can't bind us into something.
Would that be like building the grounds,
They'd have
signing a big contract?
janitorial
Jason
something.
said he had big contracts that he signed. So when we talked about this topic, I had always been told anything over $3,000 in a contract I brought to the board of
Right.
supervisors for approval to sign it, whether or not it was in my budget or not. And then the other department heads were like, they sign, like Jason with the janitorial contract that he signs. Those are big,
Okay.
and David in IT, those are real big contracts that they sign. And
We have control mechanisms in place already, so I don't know why it matters.
Yeah, so that's what we're saying. So if it was budgeted and approved, this is gonna renew in this coming year, and the board agrees with it, that's kind of like they've already given the approval for that renewal.
Right.
If it's a
So,
new
we've
vendor,
already-
they need to come to you guys.
You think in terms of like SOX, or, Sarbanes-Oxley, for example, you have controls in place for, so if you were to sign a 5-year contract for something, it still has to come to this board as a control for us to say yes or no, whether or not it's being approved, so I don't know that it really matters.
Because how it was written, effective, today, the employee shall not have right to make contracts or commitments.
No, I don't think.
To make a contract, doesn't say nothing about signing, it says to make the contract.
Well, wouldn't that be like if I signed it, someone else may physically typed it, but I signed it, so.
I'm asking Matt.
Oh, sorry.
You can have oral contracts that don't have to be signed, so if they have the authority to make a contract, the signing of it, I could orally say, I could call somebody up and say I'm ordering 10 reams of paper, I'm just using it as an
I just think
example.
we need to define what the binding term would be, so like, to Matt.
You just need to make-
Point, $3,000 or whatever, then it has to come to that, well, we've already got some of that in place, but I do think we need to set a limit on how many years they can bind us into a contract. So if Matt goes or John goes and says, well, we're gonna contract with this company to asphalt, 3,000 miles of Pot County, 1,000 miles, I guess, all we got.
I think a
We
number,
do it for so many years.
yeah, I think a number would be helpful, that
Maybe
if
two.
it's
Maybe within the
over.
fiscal year too?
Yeah, and if it's over a certain amount, that it has to go to the board's approval. I mean, and it might be different for different folks. John would have very big contracts that he's signing, maybe you're gonna give him a different authority than you're gonna give, HR. I mean, it's a different, situation, but I
This
think,
like points to the fact that we don't have a CFO. I mean, no offense, Mitch, but I mean, we don't, and I think we need one, or we need to somehow put that title on somebody, because someone should be managing those things. Because we can all say, oh, well, John, you can spend $100,000, and Matt, you can only spend 20, or whatever, but that's not, we need to actually have real math and real, someone who understands why or how that works behind it, so.
The checks and balances, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're the final check, but there still needs to be someone processing on the front end, and I think that needs to be more of a CFO type role.
legally, yeah, you're a check, but if it's a question mark about, like forming a contract, if there's a question of agency and who has authority to sign a contract, you can't really, if a contract's been made, a contract's been made, and we're gonna have to honor it. So I think you wanna have clear scope of authority for your department heads over what they have the authority to sign and what they don't have the authority to sign. Then it's sort of vendor beware if they sign a contract with somebody and it exceeds the scope. I just think.
And it's as simple as coming to us
Right.
and
I just think,
talking with us. and
I think
getting
you should
approval.
you should either have dollar limitations, timing limitations, something along those lines. But I think those probably need to be clearly spelled out so that there's not a question that a department head can bind you to a contract that exceeds the authority you think that they should have had. You just wanna have that up front.
Okay. I just take it out and bring the contracts to the board.
I feel more comfortable
You know,
with that, cause when we gotta approve everything, there's a little bit of liability on our backs.
We sign, the department that probably this would impact the most would be IT. With with our security agreements, some of that other stuff. David's really good about bringing it to us anyway. Sometimes we sign a 2 or 3 year agreement. He'll come back to us when that one's ready to expire, we'll do it again. I think that's a fairly decent practice. I mean, if it's in your budget, no,
It's weird, cause
I don't wanna go there.
I mean, that's, I get it.
I think you oughta
We
just,
indirectly approved it if it's in your budget, that's what we gotta be careful of.
yeah, I don't know if I wanna go there. I just take that out, I just come to the board. It's not that big of a deal.
Come to the board with
Is that
everyone.
a big deal, John, to you, coming to
I
the
think
board?
how you define contract. So if I have a DOT letting in a contract, I come to the board. If it's a maintenance project, I don't necessarily have to have a contract, I can accept a proposal, but I think you could argue that proposal and a purchase order is a contract as well.
But we still have to approve it anyway, it still comes to us, right? I mean, comes
No,
through.
we're doing that work, we've always just, done
But
work.
that's based on budget too, correct?
Right, it's in our budget, so we're following pretty much Iowa code and what the limits are and what these types of work are and
HR day.
what kind of method we use to get the work done. So
Right.
there's a lot of proposals we accept an issue.
You're kind of special, John, in that.
Well, the struggle is every line of control obviously makes this less nimble as an organization, right? So if somebody comes to you as a department head on Wednesday and they need, they want a contract, it's at least, 6 days before you can get that before the board. Most of the time, that's not an issue. If you're running out of toilet paper in your office, just use it as an example, I don't wanna wait 6 days for that. Right? So if that's a contract, then,
That's why I think it's important to have dollar amounts set so you can have that protection in place, so they can spend $2,000 on a credit card and whatever, whatever, we have to come up with that limit. I think that's important, we do that anyway.
We're running out of time, so, as far as, I guess you guys have worked out a contract before. But we
don't want to.
okay,
We
so
would-
I would.
He means
then I would
before
go-
July 1st, Justin,
I pulled that out.
when he says we're running out of time, not time today.
Oh, I got it.
Pull it
Okay.
out and discuss it with,
For the
rest of
fiscal
your,
year.
Right.
department head team and
Okay,
come up with something.
okay.
Well, most generally, if the contracts are of any, I guess, magnitude, we have legal review them anyway.
Correct.
The reoccurring ones, I guess, unless they're not forthright with this, if they change language, and the reoccurring ones would be the only ones that'd be questionable. I don't know how many of those rush contracts we've seen. Was there a specific department that was wanting this changed?
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Maybe you could have something in the agreement that just says for any written contracts, prior to, execution, they will be reviewed by legal, and that because I won't approve them unless I know the board's gonna be on board, with it as well.
Will that exclude like purchase orders and proposals and
I'm-
less than contracts?
Yeah, I haven't been reviewing those for you now, have I?
You would
Nor am I
know.
asking for the extra work.
Okay, so is there a
Shop.
Yes, page 212A, we'd like to reword that to say, the board and employee may agree to terminate this agreement upon at least 30 days' notice to the other party. Payment of wages and leave balances will be paid according to the employee handbook.
What's that telling us?
Well, how it was written before, there was one short sentence. The board or the employee may agree to terminate this agreement. But when you looked at all the other different terminations, it spelled out what happens with leave balances. And so we wanted to add that in this one as well.
So you get paid, let's break this down a little bit more. You're basically saying that we're gonna pay out sick leave.
Well, no, because according to the employee handbook, you only get paid out sick leave when you retire. So if you're not retiring according to A, you don't get paid out that sick leave. So you would get paid out your vacation leave,
Yeah, that's.
any personal balances. But we'll get to that in C.
Why am I signing a contract that says they're gonna follow the law? I already do that.
Well, we put that in there because again, when we look at termination, there's an A, B, C, and D, and each one referenced what leaves were paid out except for A. So we just put it in there, paid out according to the employee handbook to make it consistent. So we're not asking really for anything different there, we're just directing it to the employee handbook. I agree, why do we need it written in two places?
Well,
But to be consistent. So let's keep going because you may have some other questions that may relate to this one. So then under B, that's discharge for cause. We'd like to add, if terminated for cause, the employee shall be entitled to payment of wages, including accrued vacation time, through the last day of employment. So if you let me go tomorrow, I'm only paid through tomorrow, and whatever vacation I have on the books through tomorrow. This is not different, we're just spelling it out better.
okay.
So we're not getting anything extra if you terminate a department head for cause. Okay? C, what we're saying is, in the event the employee is terminated by the board at will, other than for cause, the county agrees to pay the employee 30 days severance pay. That's today, and now we're adding, along with the entirety of their leave balances, including vacation time, sick time, and any unused personal days.
What,
So what
why would, how could you be terminated other than for cause?
Well, that's a good question.
Well, there's
But-
candidates out there that ran for office said, when I get elected, I'm gonna fire anyone that makes more than $100,000.
That's correct,
That's
and,
without cause.
correct. And
Yeah, well, but that takes 3 votes.
But I'm just saying, if that was the mindset that this individual brought in and tried to push this forward and got passed, that'd be without cause.
And so a statement like that could lead to some thinking, well, I really need to cover myself. If I haven't done anything wrong and for whatever reason, the board is gonna let me go without cause, I'd like to be protected because there was no reason to let me
I
go.
would like to add a layer to this to consider. I would say that individual needs to be vested at that point.
Vested according to IVERS?
IVERS, yeah. Because here's what I don't like. Well, severance is one of those things where, I feel like you gotta earn it. You shouldn't just be a contracted department head and get that, and then, for whatever reason, we let you go, and next year you get a severance for it. I think that's.
Some length of service is what you would like to have in there, yeah.
I think IPERS is a pretty good timeline for that.
7 years.
That's a 7-year deal. I think that's too much. I mean, you know, Jen, how long have you been here?
3.5.
I mean, you go out private world, you know, it's all over the place, it's everywhere.
Well, in the private world, yeah, well.
How are you gonna terminate somebody without cause, though, if you have a contract? I mean, I'm just viewing this from that feels like breach of contract to me.
Well, wouldn't that just be, hey, June 30th, your contract is ending, we're not gonna renew your contract, so you're.
Yeah, failure to renew a contract, though, is different than I'm terminating, without good cause.
Well, you know, maybe we get rid of the planning and zoning department. We don't need Matt anymore. Or maybe we hire. Maybe we hire HR sources from outside. We don't need Janet or Kim anymore.
No, I get that. I'm just saying if we've agreed to hire her, I mean, I'd have to take a look at it. I'm just telling you, if you sign a contract that you're gonna employ somebody for a year, and then you make a decision to eliminate their department after 6 months, I mean, you still have signed a contract that they're employed for a year, so.
It's kinda like a coach's contract, I guess, in football, they gotta pay that contract.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, those are things, I mean, I'd wanna look, I clearly understand I'm gonna terminate somebody for good cause. You should not be tethered to somebody who has committed misconduct prejudicial to their employer, you know, or, you know, something along those lines. But if you've signed a contract, that contract is, I mean, it's the contract until it's up.
And so, would that be, Matt, so if we didn't put this wording in, and the board let a department head go, not for cause, again, yeah, you would really question, why are you letting them go, though, but you're just gonna say, hey, tomorrow's your last day, and we have 6 months left on the contract, they need to be paid out for those 6 months.
Yeah, I'm just saying I feel like we'd have a breach of contract action that would be a decent one. If you've hired somebody for a year, they sign a year contract, and then at 6 months, you wanna let them go, not for anything that they've done, just because you wanna restructure whatever. I mean, I feel like we'd be on pretty legally shaky ground not paying them out under the terms of the contract.
But if we put this statement in, then you wouldn't have to pay them out for 6 months. We're clearly saying, we're gonna pay you out 30 days plus any of your leave balances, including sick, vacation, and, personal leave.
Okay. I like that. I guess back to the statement I made earlier about how this has changed multiple times. I mean, what is the benefit of having contracts other than making it easy for us to not renew? Like why, if we're gonna have a planning and zoning department, why are we having a contract for that department head? What good are we doing other than saying, well, if Matt's not doing a good job this year, I can just let him go by not renewing it?
So what, you want my view on the contract?
Yeah, I'm just curious, what's the benefit of you having a contract?
So would be, there's really two benefits to it. From my view of it would be is those personal days that are written in the contract, that's not in an employee handbook anywhere. It's only in that contract part of it, which we've always discussed. Could you move that out into an employee handbook policy? You probably could. And then the other part of it would be just that termination portion of it. If for whatever reason, you know, political powers that be, there's 6 of us, I believe, that have counted, that the Board of Supervisors could potentially just say, you know, we're gonna do this with that position, and then it would be to have those days paid out to me, the 30 days, and then, you know, the time being, so that 30 days paid is, I've always seen that as kind of a benefit, because an election, planning and zoning is usually in the election topics. And it centers around, it's centered around the department head before me, it centers around me now, and I'm sure it'll be the one after me, but.
I just, like, for continuity's sake, I don't like it, because there will be change next year, you know, and that board can just say, well, I wanna change my administration, you know, they can change all that by simply not renewing contracts at the end of July or whatever. So it's kinda like, could be your 6-month notice kind of thing. To me, if you don't have contracts and we build these things into there, then there's continuity built in. And then it means that if the board doesn't like what you're doing, they have to go through those steps to get rid of it. I mean, I think all it does is make it easier for the new people to make changes if they want.
You know, you can do the what ifs for days and days and days, but I don't wanna speak for these two, but you have 3 board members here that are gonna stay here. I don't have any intention on getting rid of any of our department heads. They're the ones that make this county.
I'm in total
So,
agreement with that.
I don't want you to think that this contract's a save all end all, but, I've had, I don't know about the rest of the board, I'm sure they probably have too, that, you know, we may or may not agree with everything you do. But that doesn't mean you're doing a terrible job. So, we have great department heads. I'm not too worried about any of this, really.
I mean, they are, so I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that
I
they
know,
got together
but
and
they're
did
putting the
this
language
is
in here to
important.
fix that. They're putting the language in here that makes them feel more comfortable about their position.
Yeah, but I mean, you just said yourself, you have no intent of making any changes, so why have contracts anyway? What's the point? What benefit do we have other than saying I can fire you at the end of the year? A lot easier.
I think there's a sense of comfort that they get.
5-year contract.
You know, if we say, you know what, we're gonna give you a contract and we're gonna vote, and it's gonna be, whatever.
Because what I don't like about the contracts is we have very pathetic, and I'll take heat on this because I'm part of that for the last 7 years, but we have done very little to have real quality reviews of these folks. We bring them in at the end of the year, we kind of tell you, yeah, you're doing a good job, and that's how it goes. So like, I don't see the point. They are the continuity regardless, no matter what.
This board changes.
This board will
It
change.
changes every 2 years.
It could change.
And we need to make it so each of these boards, it's consistent over the time. When we flip the board,
If I put my partisan hat on, this is an easy decision. We're gonna have contracts. Because it means that we can put our people in place where we need to put them in place. But if I want to just focus solely on continuity, I don't think contracts are a good idea.
I mean, unless you made a multi-year, right?
Then, I mean, then again, what's the point?
again, these guys all want to be reassured where they stand.
Okay, right, that's the discussion we can have after this. Can we finish the language changes in this contract?
Yes.
Is there anything else you wanna change here,
Yes.
Jen?
So D, death of an employee, we would like to add, that, so upon, how it states today is that should the employee die during the term of employment, the county agrees to pay the employee's estate any compensation due through the end of the month in which the death occurred, including any accrued vacation, and we'd like to add sick time and any unused personal days. So if I pass on July 1st, you'd pay me through that month, and then any of my leave balances, if I pass on July 30th, you still only pay me through that month, but any unused leave balances.
Yeah, so.
Yes, we talked about.
We're all planning the beginning of the month.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I guess the only other question is what do we have in place otherwise?
What's it say in the employee handbook already?
I mean, are they entitled to like their health care for a period of time after that and all that too, or is it just depend when they?
We don't have much healthcare after you die.
Well, for dependents.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's family on it, yes.
I get that, but I'm talking about, I mean, we had included it, it didn't get passed, and we went through this a year ago, and it got into the ugly legal thing later, so I wanna make sure.
That's.
I know they're not a department head, I understand that, but I'm just.
That was a completely different situation.
I don't know that it's really defined out, is it?
I
How
don't
long
think
your
that
health
it
insurance
is.
Goes on for your dependents.
Yeah, I don't think that it is defined in the employee handbook. Obviously, in the deputies association contract, it is, as it should be. Their job is different and more
Yeah, I
dangerous.
mean, like, in the military, I die, my family can choose to continue to have the same healthcare premiums I would have if I were still there and alive and doing it.
No, our employee handbook does not state that.
Is there maybe some legal
There's
piece
nothing
where
in
they
the
can
employee
go on the
handbook?
Cobra, where they can have Cobra for a while?
Yeah, I mean, Cobra, yes, but now you're paying 100%.
You're gonna be there, right?
But that, or, there is nothing in the employee handbook, is that right?
No.
Okay, then we go back to the unused personal days.
Yep. Those are, and now said those are the only changes.
No, I mean, I think that's super agreeable. I don't see why that'd be an issue.
So, I mean, we've had to have, I assume, employees pass, in the past, and employee handbook doesn't state how that was handled, huh?
There is a part in the employee handbook about, like the amount the family would get paid, isn't?
I'm looking right now.
For a regular
All
employee.
employees. Isn't there something there about
Yeah, cause we were,
they would get like you get a portion of the salary or something?
they're 2 weeks behind.
It's not much,
Yeah,
but
they're.
Can't be using vacation for that, can we? Put in vacation while I got.
Okay, we've seen the revisions that, the department heads have come up with. What's the pleasure of the board to move or approve the department head contract revisions?
I want to approve with the revisions we talked about.
Okay.
Sorry, so to clarify the revisions we talked about, I mean, 3, we didn't actually decide on anything other than it needs to be reviewed, so I was taking that back to the department heads. 6, the board was recommending that comes out. I can take that back to the department heads too, or as well.
You're gonna have that ready by the 28th, Jana?
Yeah. I mean, the 28th, I'd like to bring each, so what I'll do is review that with the department heads, however they would like to move forward, then I'll be bringing each individual one to you with those same changes.
The only one in question is number 3.
Okay.
Is that right? I don't have any issues with any of them.
Well, if truly they need to, in the 5 days, then maybe the incentive is, if you don't use the 5 days, we're only gonna reimburse you for 2.5 of the days. We're not gonna reimburse you for all 5 of them.
John or Matt, any thoughts on that?
that's not a bad idea.
John?
The limitation of authority is about the biggest clause in there that I worry about.
Okay, so then 6, I don't think I think that's a good compromise. I mean, I can't speak for everyone else, and I'll take it back with them, but I think that's a great suggestion.
You want them to use them,
Yeah, and we can put a statement in there that the preference would be that a department head is able to take a break away from work and use them. I mean, we're not saying must or shall, we're just saying preference, which does indicate the board's preference that please take time away from work, go enjoy, life,
Did
what
we
have you.
not cap PTO though, for the,
Vacation is capped, yes.
what's it capped at?
Well, it depends on your years of service. Let's see. So if you want to look at the max cap, which is after 24 years of employment, it's capped at 280 hours. And sick is capped at 960 hours regardless of your years of service.
Very generous.
I think it is.
It is. Agreed. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Okay, so we're not taking any action today, you're gonna make
I'll
these changes?
rescind my motion then.
Correct.
Okay.
Wait for the revisions.
That sounds good.
Okay, so then, let's see. Does the board, Supervisor Schultz doesn't really care if we have contracts or not? Does the board want to move forward with contracts?
I think it should be up to, I mean, well,
I mean, is the board willing to put them into the employee, I mean, the benefits, the only benefit sides of it, put those in the employee handbook? Like the 5 personal days, for instance. If they were just in the employee handbook?
Do you wanna speak to that a little bit?
I'm sorry, I lost what we were talking about.
So if we eliminated the contracts and just put, you know, the benefits we talked about, you know, if we get termed for, you know, without cause and the 5 personal days, those are actually in the employee handbook, would we be fine getting rid of contracts?
It would actually, so, I see Justin's point on that, and it would actually benefit department heads to have that, because then they would have to go, you know, the boards would have to go through the process, and it would kind of take a little bit of that political side out of it. But I've seen on the board side of it, how we have utilized that in the past, and it made things easier for us in the position that the board was in.
yeah. I mean,
John, what do you think?
I don't know if I have strong feelings either way. For me, I think the term of my employment has to be set by the board in the code 309. So for me, that's what the contract does easily, I guess, is set the term of my employment. You still have to do that, but.
I mean, how long have we been doing contracts with heads?
we've had years where we didn't even renew the dang things. You
So
know?
there were years prior to me, coming here where the contracts, I saw it on the agenda in November, but backdating. So it wasn't like it was early, it was late. But if I look at the employment contracts that are saved in HR files, now they could definitely go before that, but it goes back to, what I have saved is 2005. And I'm sure it goes back farther than that, it just wasn't saved electronically. Yeah. So a long time, Brian.
I just think we leave the contracts in place. Move on.
Approve the contract, what'd you say?
I mean, I think we just need to get these changes made and approve these contracts for the sake of where we are right now. I mean, here's my honest opinion, if we're really thinking about getting away from contracts, I think a lot of time and thought needs to be put into that and not rushed in a 2-week period. I just don't think that's fair to the employees or the board. And I mean, that's the only thing here. I don't care. I'm indifferent. Like I said, if I wear my partisan hat, absolutely, let's have contracts. Because then it means when I need to push whatever partisan thing I want to push, I can put the right people in place and make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side of it, I think there's huge value to having continuity. But I think some of these things that they're talking about trying to put in there need to be put into the handbook. And I think this board needs to carefully think those things through before you do it.
What do you think, Scott?
So I think we just roll the contracts this year.
Well, I think that from what I've heard from the department heads in the past, they, for whatever comfort level it brings them, they prefer to have a contract. I mean, if we can get it done through the employee handbook somehow or another, I mean, going forward, then so be it. But for the time being, I think we do the contract.
Let's do the revisions then.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll bring the individual contracts to you next week.
Okay.
Okay, we don't have any public comments, I do not believe. There is one thing I'd like to just visit with the board about real quick, and this is in our received and filed. There's item 4, I'd like to take a look at individually. This is one of those payroll status changes that, you know, we sent notices out to our department heads that you need to get this to the board when you want it to be effective. They wanted this to be effective June 8th. It was signed by the department head June 16th, and it makes it to us on the 21st. So I would ask that the board consider making this effective today when we received it. We've done it before.
Can I pull this one up real fast? It's thinking.
Thanks, Matt.
Because if I know why it was late, I'd like to be able to explain
Oh, do
it
you
to
know
you.
why it's late?
No, I don't know. I'm not sure which one you're referring to, so I'm looking right now.
back pay. It's just, you know, we've asked them, Janice sent them.
Well, if that was our policy, right? I mean, we put it in, so this is what our policy is.
We said, get it in here, if you want it effective this date,
I just think it
get
really
it to us.
sucks for the employee that might have been promised something. That's the only part that's important.
Do you know what page that is?
The name is, last name is.
Kristen, you were.
Page 91.
Shift differential payment change.
Especially for that department,
Page 91.
for that department.
Mine only goes to 88. Yeah, can I see? And if it's shift diff, we may not have a choice.
See that one?
Yeah, I can't explain why this one has come in late. I mean, because if it was June 8th, you would assume that they were working that day to get shift diff, but shift diff is in their contract. So I feel for this one, I'll be happy to give the department a call and talk through, can we talk about why it's late? But I don't believe that we cannot do it.
So this status change can come through in July and go back to June 8th?
Well,
That's not.
no, I agree, and it does put payroll in a bind. If they have, because when payroll has to make back changes, there's a lot of work involved. It's not like you just put it in Tyler and hit enter. They have to go and there's a lot of manual work.
I get it, but we put a policy in place for a reason. I mean, I understand that, but there's a very specific reason we did this, and now
Yes.
we're saying, oh, forget the policy because it's full extra work.
Well, no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that, you know, and Department of Labor says, we have to pay you for the hours that you work. This person also was under a union contract that says if you worked between these hours and these hours, you get this shift differential. So the fact that it is late, I mean, luckily it's not 6 months late.
It was already built in.
I'm guessing it was already built in, yes.
Okay.
And so I think this would be a great time for another reminder and to maybe ask the department, why was this late? But for the sake of the employee, I feel like we need to approve it and pay it.
Well, I think you also.
It's probably already being paid, sorry, Scott.
You put a mark on that department and say this is, whatever the second strike or whatever, we're not wanting to punish your people. It's, you know, how tough it is to get people to work down there and such.
Yeah.
No, this is absolutely not the employee's fault at all.
Right. But I understand payroll's thing because at the end of June, that's a quarter close for payroll. You gotta go back and refile all your documents for the payroll quarterly report and stuff, and it'd be a pain in the butt, so they need to understand that they're affecting a lot of other people.
You know, I agree with you that, you know, it's not a great thing for the employee, but the department head's responsible for that. They need to answer to the employee why they didn't get it in on time.
Well, and it's easy to pass the buck onto the board here.
Right.
I don't like that either.
No, that's exactly right.
We don't see the message.
Oh, well, the board didn't approve it, so, I mean, look, I can't believe they did that to you. But the reality is we have a policy in place for a reason, and they should have been followed.
Okay, keep us posted on that one then, would you, Jenna?
How long ago I saw an unemployment one come across, things like that.
I think we need a memo put out.
We've done one every year.
Sometimes it needs to be repeated.
And so I try to look at them, I'm sorry, I did not look at today's. I try to look at them beforehand and then reach out to the department head so that I can have a reason for you. Sometimes there are valid reasons, but I'm sorry, this one I didn't look in advance, so. But I will follow up and get some details for you.
Well, we should be anticipating a lot of these anyway. I mean,
Shouldn't?
right? We should be able to anticipate a lot of them
Oh,
coming in. I mean,
yes.
I would think if you go to that department, you should generally know who's next in line for these kind of things.
Correct.
So we should,
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean.
I just want to squeeze employee over here.
Okay, next item on the agenda is adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, are we off, Mitch? Are we off, Linda?